I'm going to do another video of cold cases that were solved a lot later. I know you guys really liked the last video I did like that, and what I thought was special about these cases is that they were all solved in 2020, so very recently. So let's get into it. The first case is about Adam Brundage. Adam Brundage was 26 years old and a father of 2 young children. He had recently gotten an inheritance after his father passed away worth $150,000. He used $80,000 of that to put either down payment on a house or to buy a house. I think he used it as a down payment, but he was able to buy a house with it. And then he kept the rest of the money in his account to be able to provide for his children. He was separated from his girlfriend, like they were no longer together, but she regularly visited him. Eventually he met a man named Damon Smoot through mutual friends of theirs, and the two got along really well, and after a while they became roommates. On October 4th of 2004, the two drove to a local quarry together that Damon worked at. Adam needed to pick up some sand for a home improvement project he was working on, and since Damon worked at the quarry, he was like, let's just go at night, I'll let you in and you can take some of the sand that's laying around there. However, while they were there, the two began fighting over money issues, and Damon snapped and killed Adam with a baseball bat. Damon then disposed of Adam's body under sand in the quarry. For the next couple of years, really, Damon just kind of lived Adam's life. He started driving around in Adam's car. He continued to live at the house that was owned by Adam. And of course, people questioned this, but he always had an excuse. So when people questioned him why he was driving Adam's car, Damon told them that he was driving it while Adam was away on a trip, and that Adam had actually asked him to drive it while he was gone. But when police started looking more into Adam being missing and Adam's family getting police involved because they hadn't seen him in a while, Damon told them that Adam had actually fled the city because they didn't want to pay child support any longer, and he was not coming back. And he later also said that Adam left the city because he had an outstanding arrest warrant on him. I don't know if that was true. I mean, if he told police that, police would have been able to check that, so maybe he did have an outstanding arrest warrant, but we know that he didn't leave the city. And the lies just kept building from there, like it just grew into a much bigger lie. But interestingly, Damon was never actually arrested for Adam's disappearance. Like, police obviously had him as their main suspect. He, changed his story every time and was pretty much living Adam's life, but they never had enough evidence to arrest him for it. He comfortably lived in Adam's house and drove his expensive car for 8 years before he got arrested on another charge. He was arrested for assaulting and threatening to murder his ex-girlfriend. In 2012, he was sent to jail for this for 5 to 10 years. Now, in January of 2020, Adam's cold case was reopened, and police did re-interview Damon in prison and kind of put pressure on him a little bit. And at that point, he accepted a plea deal for a lesser sentence if he gave a full confession. So he then confessed to police what happened at the quarry and what he did with Adam's body. And he was eventually convicted for Adam's murder and sentenced to between 20 and 40 years in prison, which I actually still, personally, I still think is a pretty heavy sentence. 20 years, obviously not, but if he spends 40 years in prison, I think that's more than you normally get on a plea deal. course, it's less than life in prison, and that's fully what he deserves. Damon was poor. Like, he didn't have a lot of money, and he was very jealous of the money that Adam had, and that's what they ended up arguing over. Because, as far as I understand it, Adam was upset that Damon wasn't paying rent and wasn't, keeping his part of the upkeep of the house. And Damon felt like Adam had enough money to pay for it all. So he was purely jealous. I find it so interesting that he was able to live for 8 years in like in Adam's house, driving Adam's really expensive car. I know that they didn't have enough proof to arrest him, but it's a bold move on his part to not run away. He was literally living like in Adam's life, knowing full well that his family was nearby, that his ex-girlfriend and kids were very close by because they used to regularly visit the house. And he was like openly defying them, like, yeah, I killed him, but you can't do anything to me. And I found that part of it so interesting that he ended up being arrested for something else. But I wonder if he hadn't been in jail at that moment, whether they would have ever been able to convince him to confess to the murder, or if he wouldn't have just continued living. I mean, eventually, I don't know. Here's another thing, by the way, sorry, I find this weird. He told friends that Adam gifted him the house when he left the city. But unless that's done on official paperwork, I don't really know why his family didn't have rights to the house. I guess because Adam at that point wasn't officially declared dead. So as long as he was alive, the house remained in his name. I don't know. I find it interesting that he was allowed to live in the house and drive Adam's car for so long, and that his family at no point had a right to jump in and say, this is not yours. It goes to his next of kin, and we're gonna kick you out. I don't know how the legalities of that work, but I find it really interesting that he was able to live there for so long, and like nobody could do anything about it. So yeah, that was the case of Adam. So the next case is the case of Anita Louise Pitto. On March 14th of 1968, 3 boys were playing in a muddy farm field in Huntington Beach in California when they discovered the body of a young woman. She had been severely beaten and her throat had been slashed, and she was also sexually assaulted. She didn't carry any ID, so police were not able to identify the woman, let alone a suspect. There was no missing persons report filed for a woman matching her description, and since they didn't know who she was, they couldn't figure out if anyone had any motive to kill her. Her black shoes were the best clue police had, because at the time, that brand of shoe was sold exclusively in New York. So they figured that she was somewhere from the East Coast, and at least not from California. Police thought that maybe she hitchhiked her way to California, and that one of the people she accepted the ride from killed her. For decades, police had to label her a Jane Doe. And again, they were unable to interview any of her acquaintances to see if anyone had any motive to kill her, or to see, where she had come from or what she was doing in California, because they didn't know who she was. It took so long, in fact, to identify her, that one of the boys that found her grew up, joined the Huntington Beach Police Department, and retired, and she was still unidentified. I do want to point out, because I at first thought this was strange, I was like, well, 68 isn't that long ago, but apparently apparently, and I'm sure a lot of you can confirm this, apparently in the US you can retire as a police officer after 20 years of service. It's not like you have to work until you're 65. If you join the department at like 25, you can retire at 45. So I'm guessing that's what happened, that he retired after the minimum years of service. And at that point, she was still not identified. It actually became Orange County's longest running Jane Doe case. Over the years, her fingerprints and parts of her DNA were put into the system. In 2011, a partial DNA profile was created for her from parts of her blood that were found on her clothing and was put into the system. And in 2016, police released pictures of her and her clothes to the public in the hopes that someone would recognize her. Back in 2001, her clothes and her rape kit had been processed, and they were also able to create a partial DNA profile from a suspect. However, they never found a match in the criminal database for this. She ended up being buried in an unmarked grave in Newport Beach. I didn't fully understand the description of it, but they described it in such a way that it wasn't a normal grave. It was a grave where they would very easily be able to exhume her body later if they needed to for any further evidence, which they did end up doing. So the detective who started on her case worked tirelessly on this case until he retired in April of 2020. But before retiring, he had one last DNA check done on her clothes. And because of advanced technologies, they were finally able to create a full DNA profile of her instead of just a partial one. They then used genealogy to find any relatives of her. And in July of 2020, police announced that through genealogy, they had both identified the Jane Doe and her killer. So Jane Doe was Anita Pitto. She was 26 years old and originally from Maine. Her family said that she moved to California in 1967 because she was very fascinated by the film industry and Hollywood, and she wanted to work in the industry, which also rules out police's theory that she was killed by someone who gave her a ride, because she had already been living in California a full year before she was killed. She kept writing her family letters. They were in constant communication with each other through post, but the family stopped receiving letters in February of 1968. Now, her family weren't immediately worried because in one of her last letters, she said that she was planning to move back to Maine in May of that year, which is only 3 months. I mean, the postal system back then I think wasn't super fast anyway. I'm guessing she only sent them a letter maybe once a month. So they were like, okay, she's coming home in a month or 3. We'll see her then. But then, of course, she never made it home, and that's when they started to worry. But none of them had the money to travel to California to go look for her. They did report her missing to police, and one of her cousins worked closely with police in California to investigate her disappearance. Now, I am a little bit confused because police said when they couldn't identify her that there was no missing persons report filed with a woman matching her description. Now, I don't know if they only checked that when they found her body and didn't check it every now and then later on to see if something had been filed. Her family did file a missing persons report, but in 68, I'm guessing I know there was no internet. I'm guessing there was no real connection between different states, and if they filed it in Maine, it most likely didn't reach California. And even if it did, because her cousin did work with police in California, it may not have reached the Huntington Beach police police department. I mean, California's big, you know, they didn't know where exactly she went missing. So I'm guessing that's what happened, because police didn't find a missing persons report filed, but they did file one, so I'm not entirely sure what happened there. She was one of 7 children, but at the time, like in 2020, most of her family had died. She had 2 sisters and 1 brother who were still alive. And they finally, after, I have to do my math, 52 years, learned what happened to Anita. Her killer was a man named Johnny Crisco. He had died in 2015 from throat cancer, and he was 71 years old when he died, so they were never able to charge him with the crime. They were also never able to ask him why he did it, what his motive was. They did learn that he used to be in the army when he was in his 20s. He was discharged, in his teens. He was discharged in his late teens because he failed a psychological exam. In that exam, he was diagnosed with positive aggressive reaction, meaning he quickly felt mistreated and he got angry very easily. So police assume that he either made a sexual advance at her and she denied him and he got really mad, or that he gave her a ride and they got into an argument. Obviously that he got really, really mad at something that she said or did, and he snapped and killed her. Interestingly, he got married a few times, had a few children. Interestingly, his DNA was never found in a criminal database, indicating that he had never actually committed a crime afterwards, or at least not been convicted of a crime afterwards. Could have been he committed it and was never caught, but he was, he never murdered or raped anyone afterwards and was caught for that, which I think is very interesting. It's like, why he did it then, I don't know. He also got to live until he was 71, free. He died in 2015, so my gosh, 52 minus 5, 47. Oh my gosh. He lived for 47 years as a free man after committing this crime, which, there was never any justice done. But at least her remaining family finally got an answer as to what happened to Anita. And that is all there is in this case. I have noticed in my last few videos, and I'm noticing it now, that the light keeps going bright and dark, and I don't know what's causing it, and I'm really annoyed by it. I don't know if it's focusing on the lights or if it's because my light is in a little bit of a different position, but I don't feel like I'm moving that much and it keeps going light and dark. Really sorry about that. I'm actually annoyed when I edit it, so I'm hoping I can find what's causing it and fix that. Yeah, that's all there is in this video. I am probably uploading this sometime around I don't know, between Christmas and New Year's or after New Year's. So regardless, I hope you guys had a lovely Christmas. Even if you were only able to spend it with a small group, I hope you had a lovely Christmas and a lovely New Year's if that's already happened. And if not, then I hope you have one. And yeah, thank you all for your continued support of my channel in this past year. And I will see you guys in my next video.